Hello, I'm Robert Stevens, and I would like to show you some of the many highlights of the Great Ocean Road. This drive stretches 243 kilometers, or 151 miles, along the southeastern coast of Australia, in the state of Victoria. The Great Ocean Road is made even more special by its history. In 1919, 1 year after the end of the First World War, it was commissioned as a memorial for the 60,000 Australian servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives during the war. Around 3,000 servicemen who had returned to Australia after the war began work on the road. Thus began a massive 16-year undertaking. Construction was done by hand, using explosives, pick and shovel, wheelbarrows, and some small machinery, and was at times perilous, with several workers killed on the job. The final sections along steep coastal mountains were the most difficult to work on. The official start of the Great Ocean Road, 22 kilometers south of Geelong, is the surfing town of Torquay. This town is most famous for Bells Beach, which is just outside of town. Every Easter, the Bells Beach Surf Classic, the world's longest-running surfing competition, takes place, attracting top surfers from around the world. To learn more about Torquay's surfing history, you can visit the Surf World Australia Surfing Museum, which houses an interesting collection of surfing memorabilia. From here, the road leads west along the coast at sea level, passing through Anglesea and Lorne. Afterwards, the road ascends. The most stunning section of the Great Ocean Road, with sheer cliffs and majestic ocean views on one side, and the Otway Ranges on the other, stretches between Lorne and Apollo Bay.
Quite different.
After Apollo Bay, the road turns inland, leading through Great Otway National Park and onwards through Lavers Hill, where the road turns southwards, towards the coast again. Between Princetown and Port Campbell lie some of the road's most famous attractions, including the 12 Apostles. Port Campbell is a pretty town sitting on a sheltered bay. The locals swim from the jetty back to the beach. And it's also a good spot for fishing. We enjoyed our very comfortable and scenic lodgings at the Anchors just outside town, and an excellent meal of butterfish at Waves Restaurant on the main street. The next morning we headed out to Port Campbell National Park, a 10-minute drive from town, just after a storm had created a rainbow and stirred up the ocean at Lockhart Gorge. Seeing the waves crash against the rocks made it easy to imagine the famous shipwreck here of the clipper ship Lockard that ran aground on nearby Muttonbird Island in 1878, approaching the end of a 3-month voyage from England to Melbourne. The ship sank quickly, and 52 passengers and crew drowned. Teenagers Tom Pierce and Eva Carmichael were the only survivors. Swimming to save her, Tom pulled Eva ashore in a cave in the gorge before finding help from riders who were mustering cattle. Having lost most of her family in the wreck, Eva later returned to Ireland. Tom became a sea captain in later life. There is a cemetery near the gorge where 4 of the Lockard's victims are buried. The wreck itself lies just near Muttonbird Island in 27 meters or 89 feet of water, and is a favorite spot for divers. I was distracted for a moment from the shipwreck story by the sight of a rogue wave playing dominoes with 3 young women down below. Just east of Port Campbell, you will find the star attraction of the Great Ocean Road, the 12 Apostles. The apostles were formed by erosion. The harsh weather conditions from the Southern Ocean gradually eroded the soft limestone to form caves in the cliffs, which then became arches, which in turn collapsed, leaving rock stacks up to 45 meters or 148 feet high. The site was known as the Sow and the Piglets until 1922. Muttonbird Island, near Lockhart Gorge, was the Sow, and the smaller rock stacks were the Piglets, after which it was renamed to the Apostles for tourism purposes. The formation eventually became known as the 12 Apostles, despite only ever having 9 stacks. The stacks are susceptible to further erosion from the waves. In 2005, a 50-meter tall stack collapsed, leaving 8 remaining. The rate of erosion at the base of the limestone pillars is approximately 2 centimeters per year. Due to wave action eroding the cliff face, existing headlands are expected to become new limestone stacks in the future. The best time to visit the Apostles is early morning or late afternoon to enjoy the richer color from a low sun. Near the 12 Apostles, the only way to get down to the beach is by Gibson steps that were originally carved by Hugh Gibson, the original owner of the homestead. Now concreted, the steps descend 90 meters or 295 feet to Gibson Beach. Standing below these cliffs, you can really get a perspective of the sheer size of the cliffs along this stretch of the Great Ocean Road, and therefore the size of the Apostles that loom around the corner. The steps allowed us to get down and close to the famous treacherous sea that is the Bass Strait. Standing on the sands, watching this crashing surf, I felt for the sailors of past who navigated this coastline, many having almost completed their passage all the way from Europe, only to come to grief upon the rocks that lurked like sharks in the water. London Arch was originally known as London Bridge. The collapse of the bridge was only a matter of time, but people used to walk across it. One evening, in January 1990, the main arch of the bridge collapsed, breaking it away from the mainland. Fortunately, no one fell into the water. The only drama involved 2 people marooned on the newly formed rock stack until rescued by helicopter. London Arch is still a fascinating feature, and the size of it is hard to comprehend. It is located a few kilometers west of Port Campbell. The delicate arch is like a tiny version of London Bridge that will eventually be eroded until the arch collapses, leaving another rock stack, like the rock stacks of the 12 Apostles. This rock stack is called the Razorback. The sharp edges and bumps along its back are caused by wind-blown spray, which hardens small areas of rock. The Razorback once extended much further out to sea. The force of the waves gradually eroded and undercut the base of the stack. Vertical cracks in the rock were widened by rainwater, forming a line of weakness. Huge blocks of rock then collapsed into the sea, leaving the rock shelf you see today. West of Port Campbell, outside Peterborough, lies the 33-kilometer-long Bay of Islands Coastal Park. This park has outstanding ocean views and geological features. Sheer cliffs and rock stacks dominate the bays. Beaches are accessible at some points. Start the morning in Kennet River, 27 kilometers or 17 miles from Lorne. Take your first left next to the caravan park for prime koala viewing. The koala was given its scientific name, meaning pouched bear, and ash-colored, in 1817. Koalas used to be harvested for their fur up until 1927. Today it is estimated that there are less than 100,000 koalas left in the wild. There is only one species of koala, but their appearances differ depending on the climatic zone they are found in. The northern koala, found in Queensland and northern New South Wales, has short, grey fur a maximum weight of 9.5 kilograms, or 21 pounds. The southern koala, found throughout Victoria, southern New South Wales, and South Australia, has long, dark brown fur and a maximum weight of 14 kilograms, or 31 pounds. Koalas will only eat eucalyptus gum leaves. They consume 60 of the 800 eucalypt species found in Australia. Generally, the leaf contains 50% water and 5% sugars and starches. This low-energy diet means that koalas need to sleep or rest for 18 to 19 hours every day. A koala will eat 400 to 600 grams, 14 to 21 ounces, of leaf per day. Koalas have no relation to bears. They are marsupials, meaning that the females give birth to extremely undeveloped young, which complete their development in a pouch. Koalas usually live for 8 to 10 years in the wild and 12 to 14 years in captivity. The closest relative to the koala is the wombat. One of the many things they have in common is that they both have a backward opening pouch. One of the easiest ways to identify the sex of a koala is to look for the dark brown scent gland, which is located in the center of the white chest of mature breeding males. Females and young pre-breeding males have a plain white chest. Near the koala, we saw a female king parrot feeding on seeds. The Australian king parrot shows sexual dimorphism in their plumage and beak coloration. The male has a red head and neck, green wings, and red lower parts. The females have a gray beak with their green head and red plumage over the lower abdomen. Unlike the king parrot, there is very little sexual dimorphism in crimson rosellas. The most noticeable difference between genders is that males are up to 15% larger and have a relatively larger and wider beak. The real highlight of the drive through Great Otway National Park are the koalas perched in the trees. About halfway to the lighthouse, there were a bunch of people pulled over taking photos. We quickly realized that we were surrounded by koalas, in the wild, some sleeping, some awake. We had wanted to visit the light station at Cape Otway, a few kilometers from the koalas. It is the oldest surviving lighthouse in mainland Australia. It was built in 1848 by more than 40 stonemasons without any mortar or cement. The lighthouse stands guard at the point where the Bass Strait and Southern Ocean meet, and often was the first land to be seen by people traveling from Europe. The first American vessel sunk in World War II, the SS City of Rayville, a merchant ship built in 1920, hit a German mine off Cape Otway in November of 1940. Located halfway between Torquay and Lorne, Split Point Lighthouse was erected in 1891 to protect the ships that were navigating the treacherous waters of Bass Strait. Locally known as the White Lady, the halogen lamp has a 21 nautical mile range. It stands at 34 meters or 112 feet and overlooks Eagle Rock Marine Sanctuary. There are some places you come upon that are so magnificent and magical that you vow one day to return. The stretch of coastline that makes up Port Campbell National Park is one of those places. I have come back 3 times since my first visit, catching the rock stacks in changing light, the waves in different heights, and remembering the stories surrounding these iconic formations.